They're in and they're making headlines across America. The Social Security Administration has just released the official cost of living adjustment for 2026, and retirees are seeing something they haven't witnessed since the early 2000s. We're talking about a benefit increase that's set to put real money back into the pockets of over 70 million Americans who depend on these monthly checks to cover everything from prescriptions to groceries. Now, before you hear it twisted on the evening news or get half the story from your neighbor, let's break down exactly what this means for your monthly deposit. This isn't just about a percentage point or two. We're looking at the largest single-year adjustment in more than 10 years. And the ripple effects go far beyond that direct deposit hitting your account. Medicare premiums, tax brackets, earnings limits if you're still working, everything shifts when COA shifts. And here's what most people miss. The timing of when you claim benefits could mean thousands of dollars difference in how this increase affects your lifetime earnings. So, let's cut through the confusion and get to what actually matters for your financial security. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. This COLA announcement didn't just appear out of thin air last week. The Social Security Administration has been crunching numbers for months, watching every shift in the Consumer Price Index, tracking inflation data from gas stations to grocery stores. And finally, they've landed on a figure that's genuinely substantial. We're looking at a 3.2% increase for 2026. And I know that might sound like just another percentage to some folks, but when you apply that to the average Social Security benefit of around $1,927 per month, we're talking about real money. Approximately an extra $62 per month, which translates to roughly $744 more per year in your pocket. Now, some of you might be thinking, that's not enough to revolutionize your retirement, and you'd be right to maintain realistic expectations. But here's the thing. This is the highest adjustment we've seen since 2012, and it comes at a time when many retirees have been struggling with costs that seem to climb faster than their checks can keep up. The calculation method behind this cost of living adjustment is actually fascinating when you understand how it works. And trust me, knowing this process helps you make sense of why some years feel generous while others leave you scratching your head. The Social Security Administration doesn't just pick a number they think sounds fair. They use something called the CPIW, which stands for the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. Now, I hear what you're saying already. Why are they using an index based on workers when most Social Security recipients aren't working full-time? That's been a debate in Washington for years. And it's exactly why some legislators keep pushing for a switch to the CPIE, which focuses specifically on elderly consumers and gives more weight to healthcare and housing costs. But for now, we're stuck with the CPIW, and that index measures the average change in prices that urban workers pay for a basket of goods and services. The Social Security Administration takes the average CPIW from the third quarter of last year, that's July, August, and September, and compares it to the same 3 months of this year. Whatever percentage increase shows up in that comparison becomes your COA for the following year. What makes this year's 3.2%, 2% so significant is the context surrounding it. If we rewind to 2021 and 2022, you'll remember that inflation was absolutely ripping through the economy. Gas prices hit levels that made filling up your tank feel like taking out a second mortgage. Grocery bills seemed to double overnight. And everything from used cars to furniture carried price tags that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. In response to that economic chaos, the 2023 COLA came in at a whopping 8.7%, the highest in over 40 years. Then, 2024 saw a 3.2% increase, and 2025 brought us a more modest 2.5% as inflation started cooling down. So now with 2026's 3.2%, 2% adjustment, we're seeing that the economy hasn't completely stabilized. Prices are still rising at a pace that requires meaningful adjustments to benefits. And the Social Security Administration is acknowledging that retirees continue facing real financial pressure. This isn't just about keeping up anymore. For some beneficiaries, This increase might actually help them get slightly ahead after years of playing catch-up with stubborn inflation in categories like food, utilities, and insurance. Now, let's talk about what this actually means when that deposit hits your account in January 2026. If you're receiving the average benefit of $1,927 monthly, that 3.2% 2% boost pushes you up to approximately $1,989 per month. If you're on the higher end, say you maxed out your earnings throughout your career and you're pulling in around $3,800 monthly, you're looking at an increase of about $122 per month, or nearly $1,464 annually. On the flip side, if you're receiving a lower benefit of maybe $1,500 monthly, your increase would be around $48 per month, adding up to $576 over the course of the year. The key thing to understand here is that COA applies as a percentage, which means higher earners see bigger dollar increases, even though everyone gets the same percentage bump. Some folks feel that's unfair, arguing that lower-income retirees face the same inflation pressures and deserve equal dollar increases, but the system is designed to maintain the proportional relationship between what you paid in during your working years and what you receive in retirement. Here's where things get a bit more complicated, and this is information that a lot of people miss until they see their first check of the new year and wonder why the increase isn't as big as they expected. Medicare Part B premiums almost always increase alongside COA adjustments, and these premiums are automatically deducted from your Social Security check if you're enrolled in Medicare. For 2025, the standard Part B premium sits at $174.70 per month. And while the 2026 premium hasn't been officially announced yet, historical patterns suggest we could see it climb to somewhere around $180 to $185 monthly. That means if you're getting an extra $62 from COLA, but your Medicare premium increases by $10 or $15, your net gain shrinks to maybe $47 to $52 per month. It's not quite the boost the headline number suggests, but it's still an increase. And that's better than watching your purchasing power erode year after year. Some retirees who have higher incomes also pay income-related monthly adjustment amounts, or IRM, which adds surcharges to both Medicare Part B and Part D premiums based on your modified adjusted gross income from 2 years prior. If you fall into that category, your premium increases could eat up even more of your COA. And it's worth sitting down with a financial advisor to understand exactly how much of this raise you'll actually keep. Another crucial element that changes with COLA adjustments involves the earnings test limit. For those of you who haven't yet reached full retirement age, but are collecting benefits while still working, Social Security has specific rules about how much you can earn before they start withholding benefits, and these thresholds adjust annually based on wage growth indices. For 2025, if you're under full retirement age for the entire year, you can earn up to $22,320 before Social Security withholds $1 in benefits for every $2 you earn above that limit. In the year you reach full retirement age, that limit jumps to $59,520, and they only withhold $1 for every $3 you earn above the threshold. And this only applies to months before you actually hit full retirement age. Once you reach full retirement age, the earnings test disappears completely, and you can make as much as you want without any benefit reduction. Now, with the 2026 COLA increase and the corresponding adjustment to these earnings limits, we'll likely see that lower threshold climb to somewhere around $23,000 and the higher threshold move up to approximately $61,000 or so. These aren't just arbitrary numbers. They matter tremendously if you're trying to decide whether to keep working part-time, whether to delay claiming benefits, or whether taking that extra shift at your part-time job will end up costing you more in withheld benefits than you'll make in wages. Speaking of timing, let's address something that catches a lot of people off guard. When you claim your benefits in relation to COA, announcements can have lasting effects on your lifetime benefit amounts. If you're turning 62 in late 2025 and you're debating whether to start collecting benefits immediately or wait until 2026, that COLA increase should factor into your decision. Here's why. If you claim in December 2025, you'll receive December's benefit. But then in January 2026, your benefit will increase by that 3.2% COLA adjustment. However, remember that claiming at 62 means you're accepting a permanently reduced benefit compared to waiting until your full retirement age, which for most people reading this is somewhere between 66 and 67. That reduction stays with you for life. And while COLA increases will apply to whatever benefit amount you're receiving, your applying percentage increases to a smaller base number. Let's say your full retirement age benefit would be $2,000, but claiming at 62 reduces it to $1,400. That 3.2% COLA gives you an extra $44.80 monthly. But if you had waited until full retirement age, that same 3.2%, 2% COLA on the $2,000 benefit gives you $64 monthly, nearly $20 more every single month. And that gap compounds with every future COA adjustment for the rest of your life. The tax implications of this COLA increase represent another layer that deserves your attention, especially if you're sitting near the threshold where Social Security benefits become taxable. Federal tax law states that if your combined income, which includes your adjusted gross income, non-taxable interest, and half of your Social Security benefits exceeds certain thresholds, then up to 85% of your benefits could be subject to income tax. For single filers, if your combined income is between $25,000 and $34,000, up to 50% of benefits may be taxable. And above $34,000, up to 85% may be taxable. For married couples filing jointly, those thresholds are $32,000 and $44,000, respectively. Here's the kicker. These thresholds haven't been adjusted for inflation since they were established back in 1984, which means that as your benefits increase with COA adjustments and your other income sources potentially grow, you could gradually find yourself pushed into taxation territory, even though your actual purchasing power hasn't increased all that much. This is called bracket creep, and it's a silent wealth drain that affects millions of retirees without them fully realizing what's happening. If you're close to these thresholds, that extra $62 per month from the COLA increase could potentially push you over the line, making a portion of your benefits taxable when they weren't before. And suddenly your effective increase is even smaller than you thought. Let's also consider how this COLA affects those of you receiving Supplemental Security Income, or SSI. Because while Social Security retirement benefits and SSI are different programs with different eligibility requirements, they both receive COA adjustments in tandem. SSI provides payments to disabled adults and children who have limited income and resources, as well as people aged 65 or older who meet the financial limits, even if they never worked under Social Security. The maximum federal SSI payment for an individual in 2025 is $967 per month. And with the 3.2%, 2% increase, that would rise to approximately $998 monthly in 2026. For couples, the current maximum of $1,450 would increase to roughly $1,496. These might seem like small amounts compared to retirement benefits, but for people surviving on SSI, every dollar matters immensely. And this increase could mean the difference between being able to afford medications or going without, between keeping the heat on through winter or bundling up in extra blankets because the utility bill is just too high. One aspect of COLA increases that doesn't get nearly enough discussion is how they interact with state taxation of Social Security benefits. Because while everyone focuses on federal taxes, your state of residence makes an enormous difference in how much of your benefit you actually keep. Currently, 38 states plus the District of Columbia don't tax Social Security benefits at all. The remaining 12 states do tax benefits to varying degrees, though many offer exemptions based on income or age. Colorado, Connecticut, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, and West Virginia all have some form of Social Security taxation, but the rules vary wildly. Some states tax benefits the same way the federal government does, while others have their own formulas. A few states are actively phasing out Social Security taxes. Missouri, for example, is eliminating its tax on benefits for many retirees, and West Virginia has been gradually increasing its exemption amounts. If you live in one of the states that taxes benefits, this COLA increase could push you into a higher state tax bracket or reduce your eligibility for state-level exemptions, meaning you need to plan accordingly and possibly adjust your state withholding to avoid a surprise tax bill next April. The broader economic picture surrounding this COA announcement tells us something important about where we stand as a country. That 3.2% figure reflects an economy that's still running warmer than the Federal Reserve would like, with persistent inflation in key categories despite multiple interest rate hikes over the past couple of years. Housing costs remain elevated in most markets. Insurance premiums across the board, whether we're talking auto, home, or health, have climbed significantly. And food prices, while not rising as dramatically as they were in 2022, certainly haven't fallen back to pre-pandemic levels. For retirees on fixed incomes, this creates a challenging environment where even generous COA increases feel insufficient because the categories that matter most in retirement, healthcare, housing, and food often inflate faster than the overall CPIW measures. This is precisely why advocacy groups like AAP and the Senior Citizens League continue pushing for the adoption of the CPIE, arguing that a measurement tool specifically designed around senior spending patterns would result in more accurate and typically higher COA adjustments that better reflect the actual inflation retirees experience. Finally, let's talk about what you should be doing right now to maximize the benefit of this COLA increase and protect your financial security moving forward. First, if you haven't already, log into your My Social Security account on the SSA website and verify that your earnings record is accurate. Mistakes happen, and if your earnings aren't properly recorded, your benefit calculation could be wrong, which means every COLA adjustment is being applied to an incorrect base amount. Second, review your Medicare coverage during the open enrollment period, which runs from October 15th to December 7th each year. With premiums changing and your benefit increasing, this is the perfect time to shop around for Part D prescription drug plans and Medicare Advantage plans that might offer better coverage or lower costs for 2026. Third, if you're still working and approaching the earnings limit thresholds, calculate carefully whether additional work hours will actually benefit you, or whether you'd be better off capping your earnings just below the limit to avoid benefit withholding. Fourth, consider working with a tax professional to run projections on how this benefit increase affects your overall tax situation, including estimated taxes you might need to pay to avoid penalties, and whether adjustments to your withholding make sense. And finally, treat this COA increase as an opportunity to slightly improve your financial cushion. Even an extra $50 per month, if you can avoid lifestyle inflation and bank it instead, adds up to $600 annually that could serve as emergency savings, help pay down debt, or simply provide peace of mind, knowing you have a little extra buffer against unexpected expenses. Is